AstroPictionary math, calculating components of a vector. A vector B is 5 miles and is at an angle of theta equal to 18 degrees north of east. Solve for components bx and by. Let's take a look at this vector B. Vector B is at an angle of 18 degrees in the northward direction from east. Vector B can be made into a right triangle with a vertical component labeled by, as the vertical component is in the positive y direction or north. And we have a horizontal component, which we label bx, which is in the eastward direction, otherwise known as positive x. The intersection of bx and by makes a right triangle or 90 degrees. We want to solve for bx and by, knowing that b is equal to 5 miles. How are we going to do this? We're going to use equations. Sine theta is equal to the opposite side over the hypotenuse, and cosine theta is equal to the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. Let's start with sine of theta. Sine of 18 degrees is equal to the opposite side. So here's 18 degrees, and the opposite side is by. And the hypotenuse is b, which we know is 5 miles. So what we need to do is we need to multiply both sides of the equation by 5 miles. And the right-hand side of the equation, we have 5 miles in the denominator, canceling with 5 miles in the numerator. And the only thing we're left with on the right-hand side is by. And the left-hand side is 5 miles multiplied by sine of 18 degrees. Let's work on the sine of 18 degrees. We go to the calculator and we click on the degree button. Then we hit sine. We already have our parentheses, so we just type in 18, hit close parentheses, and we hit equal. That's the sine of 18 degrees. Now we need to multiply this by 5 miles. So we multiply by 5, and we get a value of 1.5. So our answer is 1.5, and the unit is miles. So let's take a look at this. We see that the long side is 5 miles, so we know that the vertical component can't be bigger than 5 miles. In fact, the vertical component looks small compared to the hypotenuse component. So 1.5 miles seems logical. So we need to put a direction. The direction is going to go upwards, which we can say is north or positive y. So I will say north in this case. And I'll put a box around it. We have now solved for by. Now let's solve for bx. Let's start with the angle of equation for cosine of angle, cosine of theta. So we have cosine of 18 degrees is equal to the adjacent side. So here's our angle 18 degrees. The adjacent side is bx. And we want to divide that by the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is b, otherwise known as 5 miles. We do the same thing. We multiply both sides of the equation by 5 miles, and we will isolate the right side of the equation as bx. And the left side of the equation will be 5 miles multiplied by the cosine of 18 degrees. So let's solve for the cosine of 18 degrees first. Make sure we're in degree mode. We hit cosine and then 18, close parentheses, hit enter, and we get 0.66. And then we need to multiply this by 5 miles. So we multiply it by 5, and we get 3.3 as our answer. So our answer is 3.3, and the only unit we see is miles. So that's our unit. And now we need a direction because bx is a vector. So we can say bx is going to the right, which is east or positive x. So I'll put east here. And we take a look at it. Since we know the hypotenuse is 5 miles and bx is smaller but not much smaller, 3.3 seems logical. So I will put a box around it, and that is my answer. We started with a vector b of 5 miles that is at an angle of 18 degrees northward of east. We needed to solve for components bx and by. We used equations for sine of theta and cosine of theta and solved, and we got by is equal to 1.5 miles north and bx equal to 3.3 miles east.